Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to this 5-minute fitness tips episode of the Live, Train, Perform podcast. I'm your host, Sean Kober. In this episode, we are going through the principle of progressive overload. But before that, we need to tie back in and recap last week's episode, which is the dose-response relationship, because that episode is going to carry straight into progressive overload. So to recap the dose-response relationship, this is simply providing the right amount of stimulus for our body to adapt in a positive manner. Now, if I do too much work and I train way too hard, way above my body's capabilities, then it's going to fuck me up for a few days and I might not be able to walk if I hit a heavy leg session, which means I can no longer train. So that dose is too much. So the response is now you can't train. You need longer time, fuel and resources to recover and get back to baseline. Okay, now if I don't provide enough stress at the gym, my body's not going to adapt. Okay, people think stress is bad, but stress is necessary for adaptation. And if I don't provide enough stress at the gym, then I'm not going to adapt in a positive manner. You'll see people that go to the gym and they do the same fucking routine day in, day out, week in, week out, month after month, and over the course of a year, and they still look exactly the same because they're not utilizing progressive overload. Okay, so the dose-response relationship is doing just enough, just beyond your capabilities for your body to go, hey, that was difficult. I need to adapt above and beyond. I need to improve my baseline so that I can walk back in the gym bigger, stronger, faster, better. All right, now this is where we use progressive overload. Most people, when they look at progressive overload, they simply look at weight lifted. And yes, that is a way to look at progressively overloading the body. Okay, now point to note here is the principle of progressive overload is super important because our body's going to adapt to whatever we do. And if we consistently do the same thing over and over and over again, then we're going to expend less energy doing that thing. We're going to become more efficient at doing that thing. So we actually need to challenge it more and more and more and more and more. Okay, but again, this is a progressive path that we take. We're not looking to overdo that stress because then that response is going to damage us. We're spending a lot of time getting back to baseline. All right, so there's many different tools to look at progressive overload, and I'm going to give you guys some tools to think about moving forward. Okay, so an exercise that I like doing is a Turkish get-up. Okay, a Turkish get-up is an excellent exercise for building strength, mobility, stability, endurance, etc. I also like to use it as an assessment for my fighters, so we can start looking at where they're holding tension, where they're losing a little bit of stability in the shoulder girdle, where they're maybe favoring recruitment patterns in the legs, whether they're pulling through the hips, the hamstrings, or whether they're pushing through the quads. Okay, so I'm using that as an assessment tool. Now, a number of ways to progressively overload this movement is to add weight, okay? Or I can keep the same weight. Let's say I've got an athlete who's doing it with a 12 kilo kettlebell, okay? I can move up to a 16 kilo kettlebell, but that weight might be a little bit too heavy, okay? They're losing stability, they're not getting the work that we want, and they're not maintaining good posture, alignment, control, etc. So what I'm going to do is use that 12 kilo kettlebell and get them to move slower. And I might get them to pause in different positions, different joint angles, different loading patterns, different areas of the movement. Okay. What I also might do is get them to do an extra rep, or I might get them to do a couple of extra sets. Okay. I might also increase their range of movement. All right. Now, I can increase time under tension. If I'm doing like a squat or something like that, I can also increase range of movement. So there's many different ways to use progressive overload. And again, most people go straight to weight. All right, I don't like using just weight. Yes, weight is a tool to use progressive overload. Okay, but I can increase sets, I can increase reps, I can slow down my tempo, I can increase time under tension, I can reduce my rest period, I can improve the recruitment patterns of the movement, I can make that movement more efficient, slower, and or faster. I can use many of these tools to make this exercise or make these movements a little bit more difficult. All right, I'm going to follow this up with an example of different ways to use progressive overload next week, looking at some of these different tools, and I'll use weight as an easy example because that's where most people go and that's what most people are going to do anyway. However, just pay attention to all of these tools that I've just mentioned because each one of these plays their own part and have their own benefit when it comes to looking at progressive overload. It's not just about going heavier. Sometimes it's about moving better. Sometimes it's about moving faster. Sometimes it's about moving slower. Sometimes it's about getting better mind-muscle connection. Sometimes it's about better balance, coordination, timing, accuracy, range of movement, efficiency, etc., etc. So a few things to think about there, guys. I'll follow this up with some more examples, specific examples of progressive overload next week. Point to note is that I will be pulling back on some of my podcast content over the next few weeks as I start moving into phase 2 of my business plan, where I'll be starting to build out my website and put together some training programs so that people can go onto my website, click on a link and get sent a training program, nutrition ebook, and all of the things that they need to push them in the right direction. So thank you very much for the support. Any 5-star ratings and reviews are much appreciated. Much love, guys. Peace.